We had a study, 174 consecutive patients with hypertension, 174 people achieved normal blood pressure without medication. We have the largest effects that have ever been shown in published papers treating high blood pressure in humans. And that's a big deal because high blood pressure is the leading contributing cause of death and disability. It's why people have heart attacks and strokes. And the strokes are often the major contributing factor to the disability that get people locked up in nursing homes with ambulatory problems and cognitive problems. And so fasting can reverse a disease that under medical treatment you're told you can never recover from. If you go to a doctor, they'll put you on blood pressure medications and they'll tell you, you will be on these drugs the rest of your life. And we guarantee you, you'll never get well. You will be sick the rest of your life. And these drugs will not resolve your hypertension. They will cause chronic cough, fatigue, impotence, and possibly death. But that's the best you can do because there's no known cause of essential hypertension. And yet we know that's not true. People that go on a whole plant food SOS-free diet, adopt an adequate exercise program, are able to reverse their high blood pressure.
Welcome to Mind My Age, the podcast where we dive into the science and stories behind healthier aging. I'm your host, Neelam Brar, and today we have a very special guest, Dr. Alan Goldhammer, a pioneer in the field of nutritional medicine and fasting. Alan is the founder of True North Health Center, a facility that has been helping patients achieve optimal health through medically supervised fasting and healthful living. Explain the top 3 immediate benefits that someone might experience after completing
Sure,
a medically.
to understand the benefits of fasting, you really need to understand why it is people are sick and miserable in society today. And part of that is that people eat ultra-processed foods, which fool their satiety mechanisms, so they get fat. And when people get fat, part of that fat is called visceral fat. And visceral fat is hypertrophic and hypermetabolic, and it acts like a tumor. So if a person, about 10% of the average person's fat is actually this type of visceral fat. So a person that's 20 pounds of excess fat has maybe 2 pounds of excess visceral fat. That visceral fat acting like a tumor elaborates inflammatory products and causes heart disease, cancer, diabetes, autoimmune disease, etc. These different diseases are treated as if they're completely independent. In fact, you have to actually go to different doctors to even be diagnosed and treated with these supposedly different diseases. Yet they all have inflammation from visceral fat as an associated component. And so that's why it makes sense when you figure that people eat too much, they get fat, they get visceral fat, they produce inflammation, and then they get this variety of common diseases. Fasting preferentially mobilizes visceral fat. So when you go on a fast, you get rid of weight, but you specifically get rid of fat and more specifically get rid of visceral fat. For example, a person that fasts for 2 weeks may lose 10% of their body weight, but they'll lose 20% of their fat and maybe as much as 40% of their visceral fat. So this preferential mobilization of visceral fat may be helpful and a reason why conditions like high blood pressure resolve with fasting. We had a study, 174 consecutive patients with hypertension, 174 people achieved normal blood pressure without medication. We have the largest effects that have ever been shown in published papers treating high blood pressure in humans. And that's a big deal because high blood pressure is the leading contributing cause of death and disability. It's why people have heart attacks and strokes. And the strokes are often the major contributing factor to the disability that get people locked up in nursing homes with ambulatory problems and cognitive problems. And so fasting can reverse a disease that under medical treatment you're told you can never recover from. If you go to a doctor, they'll put you on blood pressure medications and they'll tell you, you will be on these drugs the rest of your life. And we guarantee you, you'll never get well. You will be sick the rest of your life. And these drugs will not resolve your hypertension. They will cause chronic cough, fatigue, impotence, and possibly death. But that's the best you can do because there's no known cause of essential hypertension. And yet we know that's not true. People that go on a whole plant food SOS-free diet, adopt an adequate exercise program, are able to reverse their high blood pressure.
It's so interesting because you're right. A lot of that information seems like common sense. Eat well, have exercise, sleep well. And it almost seems too good to be true if for most people, which is why everyone's looking for the magic pill. So for those of our viewers that are listening and are suffering from some of the diseases you've mentioned, what are some step-by-step tips that they should be incorporating into their day to start the process of being healthier?
Sure. So diet's the result of health's the result of healthful living, and that includes diet, sleep, and exercise. So sleep is an important issue. It's one of our most important activities. You want to go to bed early enough that you can wake spontaneously feeling refreshed. You want to sleep in a cool, dark, and quiet place. These are the important components for sleep. Sleep stimulates the anabolic cascade of hormones associated with healing. If you don't get good quality and quantity of sleep, it's hard to heal, it's hard to maintain health. It's also hard to maintain a normal metabolism, which means you're fatigued, you don't want to exercise, and that tends to contribute to weight gain, which contributes to visceral fat, which contributes to inflammation and makes you sick. Exercise. We're designed to move around. You need to do stuff to build flexibility, strength, and as well as endurance. And it doesn't take much. Walking regularly, some flexibility, whether you do yoga classes or just do some stretching, and some types of resistance activity where you're lifting, bending, etc. So you build strength, you build flexibility. What you don't use, you really do lose. And one of the problems that happens as people sometimes age out is they stop trying to engage in activities, or they're so fatigued, or they're so in so much pain from their diseases that they're not able to engage in normal activities. And as a consequence, they lose both physical capacities and cognitive capacities. And then diet. Probably the thing you have the most control over is what you shove in your mouth. And if you shove in your mouth meat, fish, fowl, eggs, dairy products, oil, salt, sugar, and ultra-processed foods, you will get fat and sick and die prematurely. That's inevitable. And 72% of people in the United States right now are overweight or obese. So it means if you're not overweight, you're abnormal. So you don't want to be normal, you want to be healthy. Healthy people are not overweight. They don't have elevated blood pressure. They don't have elevated blood sugar levels. And they don't get lulled into the false concept that that's just a natural consequence of aging. Okay, that's a facilitated consequence of aging unhealthfully. And you can reverse that by controlling what you put in your mouth. We advocate an exclusively whole plant food diet that's SOS free. SOS is the international symbol of danger, and it stands for the chemicals added to food that fool the brain's satiety mechanisms and allow us to get fat. And those chemicals are salt, oil, and sugar. Salt, oil, and sugar are not food. They're hyperconcentrated byproducts of food that are added back to food to make food taste better. And what tasting better actually means is more dopamine stimulation in the brain. Dopamine is the neurochemical associated with pleasure. The higher the caloric density, the more salt, oil, and sugar, the more dopamine is excreted, the more we like it. But it's a drug-like effect. And as a consequence, if we get a whole plant food diet that's free of added salt, oil, and sugar, then we stop fooling the mechanisms of satiety. We're able to not only not get overweight, but we can lose the extra weight, get rid of the visceral fat, reduce the blood pressure, blood sugar levels, get rid of the joint pain, and hopefully function a longer and healthier life as a consequence. So diet, sleep, and exercise are the key. Our approach to diet is a whole plant food SOS-free diet. So you might get up in the morning and have things like fresh fruit and greens and oatmeal. You might have salads and steamed vegetables at lunch and dinner with enough complex carbohydrates in the form of non-glutinous grains and beans so that you don't get too skinny.
Here's a big question for you. A lot of people are curious about, especially those that listen to our podcast at Mind My Age. Can fasting actually slow down aging?
I think that what fasting does is it normalizes aging. What's happening is not that fasters are aging slower. It's people that are not fasting and eating highly processed foods are aging in a facilitated way. Think about this. If you're a smoker, you know how those people get smoker's face? The cross-linked collagen tissue, the wrinkles associated. You can look at a group of people and think, oh, they're probably a heavy smoker because they got that prematurely aged face. So quitting smoking doesn't reverse aging. It just allows you to age normally. Smoking makes you age quicker, so you age out faster. The free radicals associated with fasting or associated with smoking is what caused the cross-linked collagen tissue. You can do it from overexposure to the sun. You can do it from cigarette smoking, and you get that smoker's face look. What I'm suggesting is that it's not that the fasters are reversing aging. It's that the people that are not living healthfully are aging in a much more facilitated place, and that fasting normalizes function. Give you an example in rats. If you take rats and periodically fast them, you double their lifespan. But you can say, was the fasting making them live twice as long? No, I think the highly processed foods that they give captive rats ages them twice as fast, so they die in half the time. If you take rats even on those diets, though, and periodically fast them, you dramatically increase their lifespan. So again, it's a semantic difference. Are you speeding up aging with poor diet and lifestyle choices, or are you reversing aging with fasting? They talk about fasting and rejuvenescence, but I tend to think of it as just by getting rid of the causes of facilitated aging, you allow yourself to age out normally. Everybody ages out. It's just a question of how quickly. I see the difference when I play basketball. I'm 65, I'm playing with people that are 45, they're already aging out. And it's not because I do fasting, it's because I don't eat meat, fish, fowl, eggs, dairy products, oil, salt, and sugar. I'm aging out, I'm getting old, but I'm getting old at a much slower rate than the people that choose to facilitate it with smoking, drinking, animal-based, highly processed, ultra-processed food diets.
So can you explain in simple terms how fasting impacts that body's longevity that you're referring to and allows you to age?
So there's a number of mechanisms that fasting impacts. One is weight loss. You lose a pound a day and you preferentially burn fat and visceral fat. So that's a pretty big deal. Another one is natriuresis. The body gets rid of the excess salt that people have accumulated that cause them to have higher blood volumes and higher blood pressure and congestive heart failure, non-healing wounds, etc. Fasting also profoundly speeds up detoxification. If you take a fat biopsy of an average human, they're full of PCB, dioxin, pesticide residues, heavy metals. Those materials are rapidly mobilized and eliminated during fasting. Now, it doesn't make fasting always a very pleasant experience because you detoxify, you get all kinds of symptoms that are associated with that. But the whole body load of those toxins tends to reduce dramatically with fasting. Fasting also affects the autonomic nervous system tone, the sympathetic parasympathetic balance that controls the things you don't think about. For example, if you went out running and your heart didn't speed up to pump more blood, you would die. But you never have to worry about that. You don't die, oh, I forgot to tell my heart. No, it knows. And it knows because of the autonomic or automatic nervous system. And the balance between the sympathetic and parasympathetic controls how much pain you have and how many problems you have. If you have constipation or diarrhea, sometimes that system's out of balance. You can reboot that system with natural therapies. You got chiropractic manipulation, osteopathic manipulation, massage, biofeedback, homeopathy, acupuncture, etc. We have all these different systems, and the way they work is to the degree that they balance the autonomic nervous system. The most powerful way to do that, in my experience, is fasting. Fasting, if you have a computer and it doesn't work, it's a corrupted hard drive, and you turn it off and you turn it on, and you don't know why, but now it starts working because you've rebooted the hard drive. That's what you're doing with the body in fasting. You're recalibrating the gut microbiome, you're recalibrating the whole autonomic nervous system. And now a lot of things that weren't working right tend to work better. That's why after fasting, a lot of these problems go away. We actually joke amongst the doctors at the True North Health Center that you better treat people right away because if you wait till they're done fasting, there's nothing left to treat. Everything sorts itself out. And that oftentimes happens, the chronic pain, the problems that everybody's busy trying to do therapies on, just the body takes care of itself. So it's pretty good. So fasting has a number of different mechanisms, and we go into all of those mechanisms and the detailed pathophysiology associated with them in our book, Can Fasting Save Your Life? And it gives people the information they need to understand, how does fasting work? Is it good for them? Would it help them? It gives also the information their doctor needs to know if they're going to advise them in terms of getting through this process safely. Because one of the challenges of long-term water fasting is it's not for everybody. You have to really make sure you're a good candidate for that. People on medications, you can't fast on medications. You need to determine if you're a candidate for getting off those medications. You have to rest when you fast. You're not going to work and driving a car, and you do need some help and support to get through it safely.
Alan, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your incredible insight. It's great to just hear about the power of fasting, and your passion and knowledge around nutritional medicine is truly inspiring. For our listeners, be sure to check out True North Health Center for more information on how fasting can support a healthier, longer life. Remember, we age with purpose and intention. Your best years are ahead, so do subscribe below if you've enjoyed this podcast.